Julia Meek is the host of Folk Tales, Meet the Music. He did Midday Matters and has been doing radio at the local NPR station for over 30 years, nationally known, and Folk Tales is out quite a bit. I know
Yeah.
when we were up in Grand Rapids and at WYCE, which is the community radio station up there, and was talking with them and had
Thank
mentioned
you.
that you were going to be doing the workshop. I said, oh yeah, we've heard of Julie, we've heard about her
Thank
program."
you,
So-
because we're trying to get our foothold in Michigan now and more into Ohio. So yeah, thank you.
Ah.
Very good.
So she's had a lot of really good experience. It's a real honor to have her come down here and be able to, to speak to people about what is it like to produce a radio show, because we're all kind of coming in as neophytes, and it sounds fun, it sounds interesting. I think it's going to be an exciting time, but it's really good to get the basics so that we know when we're ready to launch into this, that everybody has the information that they need. So, without further ado,
Thank you, Eric.
thank you.
And yeah, he told you about all the, thank you. And here's to public radio and nonprofit radio of any sort, because I think it's one of the coolest mediums. Here are my numbers that he was alluding to. I have been, this year is quite a milestone year for me. I will have been with our own public radio for 35 years. And like you guys, I came in at the very, very ground level, just as it was transitioning from a college station to a community station. Very exciting. It was sort of, it was a whole new thing for everybody. And you can see what time and dedication by a lot of people will do. There's proof right there. I have been doing, as of this summer, I will have been doing Folk Tales, which happens to be a recorded show of world music for 30 years. First year or two, I did live classical music, which was the basic format of the station. Very, very exciting. And then I went to Meet the Music, will be 5 years old this fall. And that is a hybrid that I just adore, because we do have the facility for and the capability of recording music at our station. And so that's a pleasure and an honor to do such a show that involves music and interviews with musicians. Through that time, well, actually before that time, I did start doing, and I was the producer for Midday Matters, which was a question and answer live noon talk show on revolving topics. I also hosted the Arts and Culture Friday, and then morphed into being an arts and culture interviewer for the station for the last 3 years. These encompass about every single situation of the live and recorded formats and a wide variety of production skills. I'm not one of those people that just loves that embraces and approaches a board or even the production studio as an airplane, and I can't wait to get there and turn the dials and everything. But it's very, very satisfying, and if I can do it, anybody can do it. And so I think that producing one's show really, really is an empowerment, as well as what you put over the air, how you get. Sir?
Where is your station you're talking about? From where? Where do you work?
Public radio, Northeast Indiana Public Radio. We are housed in studios
In Fort Wayne?
here in Fort Wayne.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yes. Excuse me, and I'll make sure everybody has a card, but perhaps I should have done that beforehand. But yes, and I don't think the whole world knows about us, but excuse me. But we see, and that just goes to show, by the way, you're always marketing yourself, and so 35 years later, and that's pretty much how long we've had it together. It grows. We are located in Centennial Park, which is off of Goshen Road or Hillegas Road. We are looking to move downtown in the next year or two, which is a goal we'd love. And so we will have even more presence, community presence. I like that a lot. Okay. The hours of work and pleasure, they're interchangeable. The pleasure certainly surpasses the work, but it is work. There's no denying that. And also the enormously solid rush of sharing your word, your thought, your show over the airwaves is something singular, and you'll know it when you're doing it. most important to note, except for my current arts reporting and the administrative side of my folktale participation in syndication, all of this has been a volunteer endeavor for me all these years, including Folktales, which is, I'm proud to say, syndicated, and I'm proud, as I already said, is going to be 30 years old this year. It's a rush. Now, this leads me to the most important truth that I can share with you. If I was only going to tell you one thing and then we would all go home, I would say volunteer means no pay, not no professionality. I mean, period. I resent the only a volunteer excuse, whether it's from, as in, well, I can do whatever I want because I'm only a volunteer, or whether it's from the boss. Well, what do you expect from a volunteer? To me, you expect total professionality, period. That's the only thing that you can offer, that you should be offering, to continue the radio station and to make it be a success for a decade or 2 or 3 or 5. It has to be that kind of professionality, and I would expect anybody here and wanting to do a show, you can guess that, you know that, and in fact, that is the way it is. The second most incredibly important issue, you're doing radio, and there are things beyond the rules and beyond the good ideas that really are, in fact, the law, and that would include station IDs. You do them exactly how you're told and when you're told. Underwriters and sponsors, you announce exactly how and when you're told. Keeping logs and playlists, determining your show content and your topics and your wording. Your boss is going to tell you exactly what you can and can't do, and those of you familiar with, even peripherally, with access television, it's a different ballgame because you can do whatever you want to do. Radio has rules about everything that I just said, and your compliance or lack of it will be monitored, and you and or the station can be fined or shut down or fired. That's a reality. It might sound like a broken record from all of your boss, all of the people in charge, because you think they're just being hard on you, but no, this is a law. And the FCC is a wonderful organization, but it doesn't. Their sense of humor does not enter into that part of it at all. Period. And you don't get, and they monitor. And you might think because you said one word, because everything was going wrong, and you might think nobody heard it. It's okay, just this once. I couldn't help it. Then if you're really silly and forget the other part that I just said, you'll think, well, I'm only a volunteer. Well, all those things could be true, but they hear it, or they eventually check it, they get back with you, it will catch up with you, and then your career will be over, and perhaps the life or the continued good health of the radio station is really jeopardized by that too. I can't say it enough. And again, it isn't the fact that more than there's volunteers, it's the fact that there are so many people doing radio shows. Were there paid staff, you'd have way less people because you'd have a lot bigger chunks of people doing things. So spreading that word and keeping it that way and keeping everybody really, really serious and diligent about following all those rules is going to be tough by the sheer numbers of announcers, sir.
Are you talking about certain words or something?
There are bad words, but I'm also talking about keeping your logs, doing what you're supposed to with your playlists, doing your station IDs with the exact right amount of words in them. All of those things are specific. There are specific guidelines for that. Your boss will tell you what to do, probably has already. You will have a training manual that will tell you what to do. And in fact, yes, there are also words that you can't say on the air. There are topics and content that you're going to have to avoid.
So if you have a guest and the guest blurts out a bad word, you're fine?
You could be. Yes, that's true. If you're going live, that's another thing, and as we'll get to very shortly, picking your format and your genre that you want to do. All the solutions and the guidelines and the disaster prevention should be available, not from your boss, generally speaking, of course, but from your employee manual, from your operator's manual, your announcer's manual. I believe you've already been given one, and probably it's been suggested that you read it. If you haven't been given one, I am sure Eric will give you one. And so that's where you're going to learn all the basics of what you have to do and how you have to do it and why. It's not difficult. There's not a lot of things, but there are the basic things. And that does include anybody slipping out with a bad word, but that, especially some of those real bad words. But the thing is, that's just something that you've got to factor in or prevent, and there are ways around that, even whom you would pick. I mean, I can't think of anything unless a guest falls out of their chair or something that would cause them to say such a bad word, but I don't know who your guests might be. But you will have to do that. You will have to factor that in, yes. Staff meetings, I hope you have them regularly. That's another thing that, these are things that I can think of that people are quick to say, why should I have to go to that? I'm not getting paid for it. Or the bosses to say, well, what do you expect from volunteers? Again, you expect people to do everything they can to put their best foot forward and to put the best show forward and make your station successful. And these are the things that are included. If you you could think of this as a part-time job, doing a show, only you don't get paid for it, but that's the kind of work and enthusiasm and commitment that you're going to have to put in to do a successful show. And I guarantee you it's worth it. I guarantee you the rush of doing a show, having your word and your idea shared on the air is really something singular that you're going to love. Another thing to always remember, starting right now, starting whenever you guys started, you are the station's ambassador, and I particularly have an aversion to gossip and backstabbing and dirty laundry and all of that. It's just not part of my makeup, and I avoid people in situations that do that, but for those of you that might not, or might not think it's such a big deal, the media world is really, really a hot topic, and people are always going to think that your radio hosting and production is a huge deal. Maybe bigger than it is. Maybe bigger, not that you don't think it's important, but it's a big deal. And you are a personality because you are doing a radio show. And people will always be nosy. They always think that somebody in a communications job like radio is going to be in the know, and they're always going to try to get some bit of inside gossip from you. I beg you to stay above, sorry, but I call it yap flapping, and I really do, or think twice before you say anything, because you are a totally high profile because you're doing radio. It doesn't matter if it's your format, the public format, or NPR, or WOWO, or you name it. You're out there, you're in a high profile position, and whatever you say is going to be spread around, and it's going to come back to haunt you. So to me, the best thing is keep things positive and keep constantly aware that you're an ambassador for this radio station all the time. That's all I can say. Now, those are just some really, really basics that I hope that you already embrace or will learn to embrace. And in the meantime, I would ask, how many of you are already doing a show or have chosen your format for what you're going to do? How many are even practicing on doing a show? Just like so, and any of you other one have any idea what you might want to do for a show? Then that would fall into that you have an idea that you're going to do it. And I know that there are training procedures, and you have a nice time frame in which to work to get up and running on whatever kind of production. I would also ask who, as you're thinking about it, or if you've already thought about it, how many of you are thinking of doing a live show whenever it comes down to it? And the opposite of that would be, the option of that would be a recorded show. You're thinking live?
Well, I'm thinking recorded, and if I get comfortable with that, potentially.
Anybody else have thoughts yet?
I'm planning to do a live show.
Each of them has their challenges, and we'll talk about that as this goes on. And the other grand sort question I'll ask: how many of you are thinking of doing something with music or storytelling or something like that? Okay, and then how many of you are thinking of more like a talk show of some sort? Okay. Good, and a nice, of course, the more the merrier, and I know that we need the great variety to fill out your days and your weeks, and so that's exciting. So I would like to spend just a few minutes now on the basics for a great show that apply to all of these formats, and then we'll open the discussion to particular questions you have about your chosen format or a format that you might be thinking of, or production methods or anything else that you'd like to ask. I will be giving you a list of the basics to take home with you. And if you do need anything clarified as we were going through them right now, please ask. Otherwise, just hold your queries for the specifics, which will be a totally question and answer time period. So for best show basics, and these are kind of in the order I think of importance, and so I really did think more of you had your format all chosen, or your style, your genre. Choose it wisely. I mean, really, none are easy. I don't think I have people sitting here that want to do the easiest thing, but each one has its own pluses and minuses, and its own easy sides and its own more complicated sides. And some are more straightforward, like doing a music show, whether you were of recorded music, or a talk show where you have a format like you're going to be telling stories or telling life stories, or where you're offering a commodity that you will introduce and then let that unfold. That's a more straightforward kind of a show. All kinds of shows in the meantime require planning, and they require research, and they require preparation. A few of them, if you're thinking of doing any kind of a talk show that has call-in, requires assistance, to be sure. Or if it's a music show that you're taking requests, anything where you're asking your listeners to interact with you, you need backup that are as dedicated and committed and ready to go for the show as you are. The next thing I can say over and over again, read your employee manual. If everybody might not have an employee manual, I'm sitting here, but we do have them available, and
There is a volunteer operations manual. It's about this thick. For those who haven't seen it yet, I'll have it. I know some eyes are going, well, but there are
It's
a lot
not
of
that
this.
bad.
Huh?
It's not that bad once you read through it.
Right.
And I'd feel bad if it wasn't that thick, because you want to know, I always want to know every single thing I need to do, and also what to do if something goes wrong. And that should tell you that, and Eric Scott is very much a stickler for detailing, and also it can describe things and explain things in a straightforward and clear manner. And that's a bit of golden advice. I know it sounds probably even dorky or rah-rah or something, but you want to understand everything in it, and you want to ask questions if you need to, so you do understand. You want to read it again, and you want to do it exactly what it says. Everything that is especially to do with FCC is going to be covered in that. And I cannot say this enough, though I'm going to try to limit it to just this one more time unless there's a direct question. It is the most incredible thing you have to do, besides being able to speak and be able to show up or do what you're supposed to do on a weekly basis, is to be in compliance with all of those FCC rules, which are really, really basics that you should and would want to do anyway. That includes the IDs, the content, and what you say, and your underwriting, and all of those real basics. To be in compliance, you have to do those things. You also have to be prepared for an emergency, and whether you are going live or whether you're doing a recorded show. I know that there are going to be things in place to handle what you're going to do. There'll be an operation for that. You absolutely have to be prepared your own self, which means either getting extra shows in the can and have them ready, or to have a substitute on call. Again, learn your station's policy, work with your boss, so that you and the station are covered, because you can't have dead air. You can't even a minute, let alone a whole hour, of course. And also, for the time that you take to do everything, which could be for the extra, We already talked about the fact this is work. It's not just like a skate in the park or like with no prep or no. I'm cool and I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna do a radio show. Well, maybe all that's true, but there's more that goes between here and actually going on the air that you have to have, or it's not gonna come across. Don't skimp or skip on that planning, that research. It could be something as if you're gonna be playing music and you're gonna be talking, announcing it, if that was your basic setup and format, or telling stories, or playing recorded stories, you're going to have to know who said what, who did what, who played what. You want your information accurate, you want your pronunciation correct, you want your facts correct, you want to be playing the right music cut. All of these things can be taught, the mechanics of doing the show, but you're going to have to be committed to learning and doing and checking all of those things over and over again before you ever go on the air. I've always been cursed. I speak real fast, and I'm trying to speak slowly to you guys, but it's something you have to watch your diction, and you have to work on it. That gets to another thing, developing your presentation style. If you're lucky, your style and production skills and speed, they're always going to continue to improve. If you think after doing a show a month that you are just doing it perfectly, you're wrong, because you'd already be on national something or other anyway if you were. But seriously, you get better every day. I haven't, after 30 years of doing folk tales, I feel and get that kind of feedback from my listeners that I get better as an announcer and at announcing and the content that I play, and I also get quicker at doing it. And you will enjoy all of those things too. That's part of the challenge that keeps the radio fresh. Again, as you evolve a format that you enjoy and work real hard at it, and your own radio personality is also evolving, don't push it, let it come naturally, and work on the details, and you'll be very, very glad you did. Now here's a few on-air tips for general speaking for anybody, whether you're doing a live show or a recorded show. And nobody can make you do this, but I would strongly suggest, especially when you're starting out, to script it, period. If you know what you're going to say and keep it short, no matter what your format or your subject. I think that's a key that was taught to me when I first started doing radio 35 years ago. You're there. You're a vehicle that's going to make the next thing happen. Get to the next thing, get on to the next thing, keep it going, even if it is a talk show. And if you're doing it, then what you're saying, what you're talking about is more important than you and your ego, as a matter of fact. On a show like Folk Tales, or on a show like Meet the Music, Folk Tales goes around the world of music, has a lot of, I use words of wisdom as well as the music, and do the back announce and front announce for all of those things. There's 5 minutes in a 59-minute show of talk, and I think that's plenty, and that's one of the reasons it's well regarded. I mean, they don't want to hear me talk about how smart I think I am. They want to hear me say a minimal amount of words to teach them or entertain them the most, and go from segment to segment of that show. And that can be adapted, much the same if we're doing a live or a recorded arts interview or a music interview. Meet the Music is a 27-minute, half-hour-ish segment, and it's got 21 minutes worth of music in it. And the rest of it is actually interviewing multiple band members, usually multiple band members. And so you can say a lot in a little bit of words. To think that no matter how clever you are, unless you're, again, you would probably be doing something otherwise professionally if you were that clever. I mean, everybody would like to be a Dan Rather or an Andy Rooney, or you can just keep filling them in and in, because there are so many good Barbara Walters, you name it. But the less you say and the more you make it count, this is your empowerment. That's what I believe. Most important, choose your thoughts and words from your brain and your heart, and never your ego. Don't try too hard to be funny or cool or expert, because that's hard to make it work right. And in fact, usually it doesn't work. All of those elements can come out, again, if you're intent on and prepared for and have prepped so that you can speak as efficiently as possible, in as few words as possible, to convey what you want to. And that very much makes the most effective show. I also totally encourage you to keep it inclusive and accessible and engaging. And the opposite of these kind of things, no matter what format you're doing, live or recorded, is making it seem or feel or sound like a private party or club or in-crowd type attitudes. So, like if they know you and know about you, then you guys are the cool little group, and the rest it makes listeners that aren't part of that group, which is most of your listening audience, really turned off. You are excluding them, so they've got that one right, and it can drive new listeners away. It can also not build you continued or listeners, but it can drive them away. And that's the point of radio. You want, no matter your low power, high power, voice, what was 150,000 watts, whatever it might be, you always want to be making new listeners. That's how you're going to survive, especially folks like the nonprofits, like our own public radio. You go by funding, and you go by members, and you go by listeners, and you want to include everybody. It's public, not a private thing. And if it sounds like you're having a good time with a friend, and even inadvertently talking about things that only you and your interviewee knows, or or somebody's speaking with you, it psychologically, as well as pretty literally, it turns people off because they're not part of that. You might have again going live. That's a lot of challenges about going live, as you don't know, as you mentioned, what your interviewee is going to say. That's why you better be rock solid when you decide to interview somebody, and have it all formatted and have it be ready, what you're going to do to keep things on track. And there are ways, and one of the things we're going to talk about specifically in the third part, which we're getting there soon, is all about interview skills. Keeping it going, and that's, again, this is something that applies to on-air hosts, live hosts. No dead air, no losing your place, no yammering on, no nervous talking because you aren't prepared and you don't know what you're going to say, and no ums, and that's why, and uhs, and that's another reason to keep things scripted. And I got to say this directly. Really, keep composed, and try not to think you're so funny that you're going to just laugh a lot anyway, but especially if you've got a co-host or somebody in there with you, please don't giggle, especially guys. It just is that's one of the most unprofessional sounding things to do. It's like you're sitting there having I know the car talk guys can get away with it, and there are certain situations where it can be, kind of amusing. Bob and Ray, that shows my age, I guess, but those two guys in the morning, but. No, you keep it going. You don't. It's not your own little comedy club. Did you have a question, or were you agreeing with that? And finally, and generally, and this is to do your best show possible, is the show and station promotion and word of mouth, and always increasing your station presence. You cannot do too much, and you can give your own show word of mouth, but if you get the station going, that is going to bring more attention and more positive feedback than anything. I will also remind everybody that social media capabilities are a modern miracle, something that we did not have for most of the last 35 years, but certainly the last 5 to 10 years have been quite something. They're your best friend. There's never enough money, even in commercial radio, to do all of the advertising that you want and get all of the underwriting and all of the sponsorship that you might like. But the social media, you got to hound on it, hang with it. If you need to devote some of your television watching, your novel reading, any kind of free time to be able to keep after and at the social media, it's a gift from the radio gods, or the patron saint of radio, by the way, is Saint Gabriel. And he had the big horn thing going. And he knew how to toot his own horn, but the thing is, free advertising is immeasurable. And they will remind everybody, whether you're used to or connected in any way with the cable access here, when you don't have the visuals, the video, you've got to get as creative as you can, in every way you can, to capture your audience and remember, make them remember who you are, where you are, and why they want to come back to you. So, lastly, and that gets into how you represent the station, always remember that you do represent the station on and off air. And you can be as true to that as you wish. People that know me well, I have very firm beliefs in a lot of things, but you're not you're going to see that quite edited on my Facebook page, because my Facebook page totally is to represent me and my radio shows. I do a lot around town. Some of you guys know I do a lot of volunteer work. I do a lot of graphic artwork. I have made so many connections, and I love Fort Wayne, and I love my life here. But I keep neutral, and I'm not saying I'm a wiener. I'm not saying that I let things go by that I shouldn't. But always remember, when you're responding to anything in public, including social media, that they know you as radio, and they're going to judge accordingly. That's again, how you take that to heart is going to long-term wise affect the success of your show and your persona. So I would say that those are the real basics. You'll be getting a little take-home. Those might seem so elementary you don't need to, but I think and hope that they will always remind you of a starting point to keep things going smoothly, keep your radio station, your radio show progressing, and keep you on top of your game. And if anybody has any questions on those basics, please ask. You'll get a copy of it. And Eric's going to pass out, or has passed out, two very enlightening handouts on interviewing, and they were provided by my own illustrious co-workers at Northeast Indiana Public Radio, the manager, Peter Dominowski, and our own news director and really good reporter, Sean Beater. And I'd like to spend the rest of our session on production, excuse me, and technique questions, comments from all of you, and any way I can help you find your radio self, please ask. Anybody have any questions on, let's say, especially for choosing what you want to do and choosing whether you want it to be live or recorded? Okay, Mr. S, because that's what your hat says.
Mr. S.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like if you go live, at your risk of getting somebody on the other end of the telephone that says things that shouldn't be said, breaking an FCC rule.
First of all, going live, you're right at that. If you stop right there, there's a risk factor because you're going live. Second of all, if you're going live and hoping and encouraging call-in, that is, I'm going to use the word hybrid of anything that we're discussing, because it is a talk show and you don't know what's going on. Again, you're going to have instruction and help from your bosses, but there's a delay that you can use. You need at least, I would say, 2 people with you, and one will be there on that phone and just fielding. You got to know you got to know who's calling, what they're talking about. That can even be a challenge enough, but you will develop regular callers that you may or may not like to be hearing from. And that's another, you'll have to have policies for all of this. You're going to have your own personal crew, and it'll be your own personal crew that's responsible for this, dealing with it. So you're going to have to.
Stepping back, one of the ideas is to bring in IPFW students at some point who I won't really know as guests on a talk show. And I can't predict what might come out of their mouths. Now, if it's pre-recorded, it can be edited, right?
Yes, by you. I assume is everybody doing their own editing, which is a very fun and satisfying, which is.
Yeah, I've never done editing, so I don't know
Neither had I. And when I transitioned from doing the Midday Matters, which was all live, and had its own set of challenges, and like I say, I set up all on a volunteer basis, and set up the resident expert, paired it with one of our hosts at the station, and then got the guests and brought them in. There are worse things than them saying something untoward, and that's them not saying anything at all, or not staying on point, or not speaking so that you can hear them. And a couple of times there are challenges that are certainly worthwhile when you're talking to somebody that English is a second language and not an up and running to be first language either. You know, that has its own set of challenges. Or that kind of planning and prep for that kind of a show, you have your questions well thought out. And that's why I would say, excuse me for bouncing over to this, but you have the interview tips from Peter Domanovsky, which are just wonderful, and the interview tips from our news director, Sean Buter. And Sean's, if you took out interview and just put program or show, or at least thought that in your concept, I think what he says is so good because it applies to any kind of a show you would ever do. But seriously, and to the point that you're making, you have to be doubly well prepared to do a live interview show with questions and answers. And there's a knack. There's a knack to it. I would also say, whatever kind of show you want to do, listen to every single kind of radio show you can, period. And even if you think you've done that, even if you think you don't need to, especially if you think you don't need to do that because, like, I listen to radio all the time, I know what I want to say. Listen to how they do it. Listen to the people that you like the best or most. Listen to the people that you like the least, and figure out how to do it, and what to do, and why to do it, and the order in which to do it. Condra, you had a question first, I know, and then Sir, you.
I wanted to know, is it possible to do a combination of recorded and live? You know, have some, because I want to do music, I want to, kind of have some of maybe have it recorded already. Can you do that?
And especially in what I could imagine that you could do, would like to do, that would lend itself well to a live show. It isn't, I'm here to vouch, to swear on whatever stack of holy books you might want me to swear on. If I can do any kind of production, I know you can. And I can do any kind of production, including going live, which really does have its charm. A case like yours, it would be fun and quite doable to sit there, basically however you have your various, you've got CDs, maybe vinyl, maybe stuff going over here on your tape decks. It's just the coordinating and knowing what to say, coming out of that, making sure your mic's on, knowing how to transition to the next piece. And yes, you could do a show like that recorded, much like Folk Tales is. But then if you take one of our jazz shows or any of our jazz shows, or I have done Folk Tales live, that's just the same. You do it, and you do your own engineering. It becomes live engineering versus the engineering you're doing to produce your own show and edit it. You still might want to be able to, I wouldn't say don't add another person in there besides yourself, but it's going to complicate things if you have a live person there. If you wanted a story or something from somebody else, you might do well to have that story already recorded. If you want to talk to somebody about storytelling, you might want to have that little segment recorded. I'll also say that two of you in here I have done interviews with, and that's Keelan and that's Condra, and which I adore because these two are very cultured ladies, and I had the luxury, because that's the format that I was using at that time, of doing, those are recorded interviews, and a good little rule of thumb, I'm always going in the live ones, in our recorded ones that go into our news shows for a 5.5-minute interview. Now sometimes when I don't have talented and gracious and kind of savvy people like these two, I might have to talk a long time, ask questions a long time to open them up, to get them going, to get enough good material so I can get 5.5 minutes. But also, past 15 or 17 minutes, the longer you go, the more difficult it's going to be to whittle it down cohesively. And doing recorded interviews, unless you're going to just sit down, which is another option you might have, sit down and have an interview with somebody. And your main thing is you don't want them to say anything untoward or anything outrageous, or they don't, all of a sudden start speaking about, so maybe you didn't know that they really had trouble sometimes, had innermost thoughts about being a serial killer and what's that like, and that would be real cool to find out, and they just go off on a tangent that you would just like to drop through the floor, and that's probably not going to get you kicked off by the FCC, but it's sure going to get you in a lot of hot water with your basic, because that's going to get backlash when everybody hears that you had somebody that all of a sudden confessed to wanting to be a serial killer, which I know is silly, but I'm thinking of something that extreme kind of on purpose, and the answer is you can do those things ahead of time and just keep them basic with the very, very minimal editing. And again, you have to have your format, you have to have your time frame, that you need a very tight and good amount of questions in a pretty good order. A good thing about not going live with any kind of a two-way interview, and whether you're talking to one or two people, I mean that's still regarded as a two-way interview, you have enough, you can have control and feel calm about it and feel good about it if you are recording it in advance. But it does have its nice feel if you're doing it live too. There's not an easy answer. If you're going to throw in fielding questions, again, that takes quite a production crew, and then you have to have your excuse me, whomever is fielding your callers is going to have to really understand how to get a real quick read on who that is, so that you know what to expect as the question. And sir, you had a question?
I was wondering, on a pre-recorded talk show, how do you have, you got people that call in, how can you have people call in when they don't know the topic, or do you?
You can't.
Do that?
You can't do a pre. As such, you can't do a pre-recorded show and have call in. There would be a hybrid. Again, I would, with all my years' experience, I wouldn't be real anxious to do. But if I wanted to do something that had the give and take, I might record an interview with somebody on a topic I find timely, or pertinent, or thought-provoking, and then you get calls. Excuse me. You'll take calls on that. But again, unless you're going to have, you kind of need. It depends on your platform, but I would find it hard to make a creative platform that had a recorded piece and then we all sit around and talk about it, because who are we? We're not the person that said, you understand. And if you are going to have the person that actually was in that conversation with you there, then you might as well go ahead and do it all the way live again. All the way live, and you can't do it recorded. You could theoretically have a panel and have more than one person take part and have it pre-recorded and then present that. It's not going to offer any kind of immediate call-in right there. And another thing, if you're doing two-way interviews, because I decided that I wanted to interview you two on public radio, 2 is about a maximum that we find, period, for a back and forth for an interview. Other than that, it gets way too confusing, even if it was a man and a woman, and so you could understand all the. Sir?
When you say 2 a maximum, I guess my concept that I want to try first is with 3 people who I trust very well, and myself, so it would be 4 people in political talk, balanced.
That becomes more, that's, then, you mean that, there's nothing wrong with it, that's more like a panel discussion with you, the moderator, which is a different hybrid, and being different than a two-way, which I say would involve at most me and two people, you would have to, there's just real basics, like you would make sure to either have people speaking in a row and say so, and be repeating their name. I mean, make sure everybody knows who you're talking to and what the topic is. And another thing, if you're going anything beyond 5 minutes, you'll want to always remember to refer to your guest, their name, what they do, and tell people the topic you're talking about, so that they remember.
Maybe getting back to a music format show. I and maybe some other of us in here have ideas as far as something we see as underserved in commercial radio, or maybe even public radio. Can you get too obscure with that though, or is there a sweet spot as far as not narrowing it down too much, but still making it identifiable and have
Make people
character?
want.
Yeah.
Great question, and also I applaud anybody that wants to do the music, the story, that kind of thing. That is an excellent. There's not enough of that,
Yeah.
and so I think that's an excellent idea. Always try to figure out a way to include or engage as many people as you can, however narrow your topic is, or your genre or style or subgenre. Conversely, it's always easier to engage people with the widest variety of things. Be it, so you could just do blues, or you could do every genre, or you could do blues on organ, or you could do Tibetan bell ringing, or you could do the throat singing. That would be please don't. I love throat singing, but I can't. I can usually sneak in 3-4 minutes of one on a folktale show, but anyway, no, you're absolutely right. You still want to make it accessible, and also question yourself from the start. And you know what I'm talking about. There's some people that again, you don't want it to be because your ego thinks that one's ego thinks that the coolest thing in the world would be to do the throat singing and bel canto. And then just that's it, because everybody would think you were so cool for doing that. Think real hard if it's because the style, the genre, the sub-style is so good, or because you want to feel important, because you're right, you're cutting your own listening audience the more you tighten in and stay with one specific style or sub-style. But you can do it creatively. Just think how to do it creatively, and be as I'd still always tell somebody to go for variety, a little bit, or as much as you can, or so if you want to do real old music, or vinyl recordings, but keep it as broad-based as you can, and be sure to explain whatever you're doing. And I think that there's because you're going to have enough hours and enough places on your daily schedule to explore some of these.
That begs a follow-up that probably applies to all of us here. One thing I've thought about is, what should we include in sort of a theme or opening for our show? How long should it be? Should you just very cursorily explain what the show is about and let people want to listen, or what are the aspects of that?
Another good question. Keep it short, keep it sweet, develop your own intro where you let them know in a sentence and a half what you're doing. And that includes the half a sentence includes that particular night. That particular episode, that time. Yeah. And it's always good to have a theme. Folktales happens to have a different theme every week, because it has a different theme every week. It has a different topic every week, and so. But people always expect. But the format is consistent every single week. Same as Meet the Music. I say again. See, I switch the particulars in those two shows. That's why I'm saying it like that. The third, and then if you want to add interviewing into the mix, I let you establish something familiar that when they hear that, they will know it's you. But you got to keep it clever enough and have aspects within that change a little bit so they don't get. Is anybody old enough to remember, hello everyone, that's Carl Haas. He always did he did great classical show, but he did the same thing every single week, which almost got to be a joke. But no, you're right. Once you have your premise worked out, whatever it is, figure out a way, and don't think that the very first time you say something on air that you have to be locked into it. Take a little bit of time, once you get your format, of how you are going to go about it. Your talk, even a total talk show, you're probably going to want a little bit of a theme song. I know I would. Be clever about that, get used to doing it, and Condra's thinking of something that is all kinds of music and all kinds of storytelling, and if anything could be as on the line of folktales, that might be it, but she might always use a different one, but she would be, but it would be something similar, so everybody would get used to knowing that when they hear that, it's her show or your show. Is that?
Sure.
And there are local artists that would probably love the exposure for putting together your theme song for you.
True. That's exactly true. And also, if you guys are is everybody in here kind of thinking of going on a solo? It would be your show, even you that are thinking of a panel discussion. Again, that's good, but have your posse. And are you thinking of totally solo or maybe one other person? I can't.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've thought big about some things, but I want to start small.
Which is
one hour of music a week, maybe. I mean, I don't know much about this enterprise yet, so.
right. It'll go. And by the way, if you follow your heart on your passion on like a music thing, you're going to learn more about your genre. I mean, I wouldn't pick something I don't know anything about or even like or care, but otherwise, I knew quite a bit about classical music when I started doing, that was my very first show, live show, and my very first show, spin and recorded music. However much I knew, and I didn't think I knew more than I did either, however much that was, I learned 90% more, 90% of what I know about classical music was after I started doing the show. And that was all before internet, by the way, so it really is easy. When I say research your stuff, get ready, think about it, do it, that's so easy now and so much fun. And if you're already geeked out about a certain kind of music, if you wanted to do Tibetan throat singing, which I still say maybe you better not do that, or opera, or all opera, that's another, would be quite a challenge, either one, but learn about it. Know everything there is to know about it, and then start doing it and playing it and acquiring it and everything else, and you're going to learn even more about it. And you are going, if you decide to do that show, you're going to get X amount of followers, and they're going to love you because you are providing that music for them.
In another lifetime, back in 1992, I worked in country radio, and nothing against anybody who likes country music, but I didn't like country music, but I learned to pretend like I could, at least.
Well, that's everything I did say about being natural and letting that shine through. Yeah, sometimes you're going to have to suck it up and be a little. And by the way, I think I'm blessed, especially with the Meet the Music show, because there's no genre left behind. I do not a lot of heaviest metal, and I do not a lot of opera. And not a lot of rap, but I do some of all of that, and every single thing else I'm just dying to get in as much as I can. But I really do like all those genres of music. Some more than others, and nobody can ever guess what I like the most or dislike the most, I hope.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Let me ask you a question, go through a scenario with you, which I think will apply to almost everybody in here that's thinking of doing a show, whatever your format, especially with Eric in the room here. What I'm understanding from you is, for example, if I'm doing a talk show with a panel, and it's a 1-hour show, and I'm putting it in the can, it's pre-recorded. It would help to have a little come-on music and a little music at the end, sort of a theme, is what you seem to say. I'm not sure how technically I would do that, but that'd be fine, it'd be good. I would have to have an initial script. I would have to meet FCC rules, identify the station, whatever, my show. I have guests, something about each guest and their names, introduce them. At the end, I might have a small script also to sign out. It might be fairly standard each time. In between, I'd be asking questions. I'd have some idea where I want wanna go on the topic, but it'd be free form. I don't know what I'm gonna get back, and I have to direct that to get one person talking at a time. All right, let's say Eric tells me, Tom, you need 5 minutes for public service announcements or something on your hour. So I got 55 minutes to fill. I push the button, I start, I have to time it, even if I have to cut somebody off with a hand signal so that I end exactly 55 minutes later on the dime, or how much?
Are we live here?
No, pre-recorded.
Recorded makes it easier, and by the way, there are, he will have his method of doing it. It's going to be something similar to you knowing exactly how long your show is to be. And where before you start doing it, or once you start doing it, it will be, for all shows like that, there will probably be a middle, you'll need a minute in the middle. And you'll account for that, and so you'll have, at the very minimal, you'll just make 2 27-minute-ish, fill in the blank, but you'll make your segments as long as he tells you to, or as long as you know that you need to make them, and he'll leave provisions for making your announcements.
But I mean, you have to hit it pretty much on the second. You don't want dead air. I mean, how are you gonna?
You don't want dead air, and you won't have dead air, because it'll always be quite obvious where the breaks are going to come, and somebody else at some other facility is going to. Whoever's, I don't know if it's going to be around the board or going to be all automated, or.
There will be a combination of live and automated. So obviously it will be more automated late at night when the library's closed. There will be some people that will be able to be here. But during the day, there will be volunteers that will be manning that board. So let's say your program is ending and your program is fading out. That person then fades out your program and fades up and says, "We are listening to WELT Radio. We come to you from the Allen County Public Library, down here at 900 Library Plaza, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." Then there might be a little music or something, and then it fades into the next person. Your editing software will be Audacity. That's the same thing that they're using now.
I adore Audacity. You are lucky. Yeah.
You have a computer at home connected to the internet. You can download it right now and play with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually kind of nice.
I encourage everybody to do Audacity, and you can do anything on Audacity except for.
But you would also put your own breaks in too.
You will be, I don't know how they will be recording.
For people who will be recording their shows at home, if they want to do that, we will be setting up a Dropbox account, which will have all the public service announcements for the nonprofits around the community, and possibly some events that come up that'll have to be updated as time goes on. But you'll be able to download those into your computer
And build them in. Well, how do they record their voice?
at home.
Mm-hmm. Or do they have to record here and then take?
No, they could record here. They could also record at home. That will be the workshop on August 9th with Stephanie over here in the corner and Alan Quant on how to record a radio show at home. So if you wanted to do it in your own house, you could do that.
That's just great then, yeah, because that's what I do. That's how I do a folk tale, which is all the things I'm going to say. Music gets cut in. I know how to do that. I've always worked with the tech team because I run out of physical time, and I kind of eat, sleep, and live radio. But I say all of that. All of that's volunteer. But I record all the voice parts of what I do on my show. There's a list that we rip all the CDs. We've got the middle break in as we need it. Are you going to have news at the top of the hour necessarily?
Not necessarily at this point.
What about weather?
I would like to. We'll see how that works out.
For a live show, yeah, it's a nice, because again, people, you want to be, you want them to, you kind of want to give them everything that you can and look at the weather if you're doing a live show.
At the same point, we don't want 10 minutes at the beginning of every hour either dedicated to news, more news, weather, local, national, commercials, and then finally a show.
Mm-hmm.
Julia, just to finish my question in the scenario I gave, if I do a show from push the button to stop the button with whatever's in between and all that. And it turns out that by the time I got done with my sign off, it's 30 minutes and
It'll be,
45 seconds. And I drop that off to Eric, that doesn't meet, or not 30 minutes, but, 45 seconds more than my allotted time.
I wouldn't worry too much about your time length at this point, because you'll be building, again, when you're going through the training process on this, when you start practicing, if you follow the process and procedures that Julia's kind of gone through, you should be able to hit your marks. I wouldn't
That's what I'm
get
asking, yeah.
too concerned about
Right,
that.
okay, but.
but to answer your question, you'll have them.
If you don't hit your marks, I can't get these guys back together to go through a whole hour again. I've gotta somehow
You don't need to.
deal with it.
You don't need to. You might have to cut out, you don't need to.
But I would have to edit it.
Because it has to be, if it has to be 59 minutes long, yes. It cannot be 59 minutes and 45 seconds because it's going to be chopped off because there's another show.
It'd be 55 minutes and 5 seconds. I mean, what kind of give do you have?
We haven't even gotten
Right.
to those points yet.
We just, and then those were just theoretical.
The other thing is you can program yourself to go a minute short, and then we can segue with music later. You know,
Until you get automated, then you can't do that. But it's easy to do whatever it is. What he's going to have to do with his live his show, show of throat singing from all over the world.
I really would like to hear that.
can we get a new
Tibetan monks,
Like the blues.
not a whole. Yes, yeah, that'd be way cool. Or
I've seen it. There's a documentary.
Or heavy metal throat singing. Heavy metal bel canto would be nice too. But anyway, no, because it's going to be faded out. Those mechanics take care of themselves. But honestly, if you can do something that's almost 55 minutes, you can do something that's exactly 55 minutes, or 62 minutes, or 47 minutes, or whatever. That's the easy part, especially because you're not live. Live, you know how it is when there are discussion shows, and there's always somebody that start yelling and everything at the end, and they have to cut them off. I mean, you'll do that in the privacy of your own home if you got a recorded show. Those things are easy. Audacity's fun, and I am speaking from somebody who doesn't like to do all of those things, but I do. I'm a graphic artist, and I will tell you that this is just all of the shows that I do, and that's how I fell with music's a direct corollary. It's like painting a picture with sound instead of words, instead of paint or any other medium, and it's fun, and it's wonderful fun. I think that especially doing a panel discussion, especially being on news topics and current events, again, you're going to have to go with real strict guidelines of what of content and topic that your bosses tell you that you can and that you should. That fits the criteria that the station wants to put forth as what we're going to do, and you might love wife swapping, but I bet he's not going to let you do a show about wife swapping. Just for example,
I'm hoping we do get
not Eric,
I'm waiting for somebody to come forward with a Dr. Ruth show. I really would like to hear that.
That would be great.
But I don't know. Nobody stepped forward yet.
It's
And
not
you're-
Eric that would stop me on wife swapping, it's my wife.
Well, there you go. Then that might take care of all problems, because then we'll all be going to your funeral. But no, I mean, that's you work out. Talk shows are tricky, even if you got them well. And again, you have to be true to yourself, but you want people to join in the show. I get. And doing one live and having fielding questions is the trickiest thing of all. So I'm not saying that nobody should do it or shouldn't do it. And I produced a successful one for 3. We had to quit because with the national show that followed it was discontinued to include a brand new show that had to be run over the noon hour. And because of our Midday Matters being at noon and being all volunteer driven. And when Peter, our present boss, came, he couldn't believe that we didn't have, knowing we were low budget, he still thought there were 5 or 6 people doing what I did, just to get it to happen at all. I said, that's the whole thing, but anything can happen. Recorded shows are very easy compared to doing live shows. One exception being if you get really used to your format of doing a cool music show, both of them have their appeal, and they're because really then sitting because you're using recorded music from wherever you get it. So most of the time you can. It's like you'll be like, if you're doing it at home, you're sitting at home doing it, as opposed to sitting here doing it. And they're very, very satisfying. There's not a kind of show I can think that isn't satisfying.
The only other solution that I've tried to figure out is, in order to get that response feedback during the interview, is using the service like Twitter or Facebook even, and setting up a questionnaire for whatever the interview is going to be. Be like, we're going to have this person on, we're going to be discussing this. What are your questions? You know, whether it be politics or whatnot.
So that you actually acquire your questions in advance.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that. But
And have people do it off Facebook. That would be the easiest way to do it.
but even okay, yeah.
Twitter.
You really can do that. We've done little variations of that for specific reasons, especially within that live show, but still you've got people.
Excuse me just a second. Are you talking like a survey? Like to get input
No.
while you're doing a live show?
Well, while we're doing a live show, or for that matter, doing a pre-recorded show, if I pre-record the interview, then I'm holding the guest over to wait till we get some Twitter feedback, and then asking the questions, continuing the interview that way. Or holding a second session on the interview. Because production schedules for shows can be up to 2 weeks before the actual show airs, depending on the content.
And there's also there are certain subjects, the general interest. Let's just say like a gardening show, but that's going to get your least inflammatory questions probably also. But you never know. But and then people can benefit from whatever they hear. I mean, you know, with it, though they do. People like, if you're going to do a call-in show, people like to call in.
Yeah.
If you're going to do you can have the best call-in show in the world, and if you have to do a re-air for some reason, and so you pick your best one, or there's no comment, because if they hear it, they can hear other people calling in, even though they really can't call in because this is then they get honked because they can't call in, even though it might be the finest one that you ever did, and they can learn more from that than any other time in their life. They want to be a part of it.
Gotcha.
They only do because there's other people calling in, even though it was like last year. You see what I mean? What you're advertising, you got to be sure. And I love the call-in thing, different times, and then of course different topics and different regular themes, and it's the topic drives the probable amount of calls you're going to get in, or your format. Taking calls when you've already got, it's another thing to consider if you really do have a whole panel doing a discussion and you're taking calls too. I'm just saying, if for anybody that wanted to do that, that's it isn't the fear of the unknown. I'm just afraid that it's going to be so darn confusing, and nobody's ever going to get to say very much, even in an hour, you know. But then if it was a plant doctor show, which again might be a little bit safer, but still you might get tons of calls that's going to keep you jumping all over. Even another thing, as a caller, you're going to have to, as a live show, if you want to do the call-in, you're going to have to decide if you're going to field any questions, because I guarantee you they're going to ask questions that have nothing to do with the callers that are, or they'll ask a real quick question about that so they can really say what they want to talk about. So all of those are factors that are the fun part to think about, but you will have to think about them. Also, I want to say now or ever, and I do want to make sure you all have one of my cards before you leave. If there's anything I can do to help to answer a individual question or a special question, or I think that having a theme song and those kind of things are the real fun part of it, because that is like part of like drawing a picture or, you know, painting and doing all that. So be thinking about that. But anything I can do to help, please let me know.
Would it be an option for any of us to come into your studio when you're pre-recording one of your shows, midday, or whatever, and just watch you go through it, watch you do your buttons and how
You are going to get taught all of that in that workshop. I know in my heart, and you're going to learn quite. I mean, my two techs, and I do a lot of the small work on my folktales, but then for the whole show they do that. They're not even there, but they use Audacity. I am here to sing the praises of Audacity. It's one of the most exciting, free, easy. If you guys, I assume everybody uses a computer that's here, and if you can use a computer, you can do Audacity. What are you guys locked in on a show, or are you just thinking what you might do, or?
He's thinking maybe about a music show.
Recorded, or? I mean, you're playing records, but would you pre-record your own? Yeah, that's a. I think that you should all follow your heart and your dreams and do what you want to do. But I say, if there's anything on all kinds of radio, and you can talk about commercial. I mean, there is music, but it's mostly the commercial. It's not this, and I like country, by the way, especially the old-fashioned kind myself. But there's not enough available, and I know that the public radio, as well as the other non-commercial radios, they talk is trending now, but there's a real love and a favor for musical shows, and people don't always want to listen to their own music or their own CDs. Sometimes they like to let you pick it or theme it out, or in your case, you're gonna delight lots of people because they haven't heard whatever the fairly obscure thing. You know, if you're looking for, I'll be really interested actually in hearing what every single one of you people do, because I think this is wildly exciting. It's just kind of like teaching an art class and then finding out what everybody drew or how they're going to do it, you know, and it's the more, you can't have too many good radio shows. So, any other questions?
I kind of want to be respectful of Julia's time because I know we asked you to be here for an hour. I don't know how you're feeling.
We'll move on, but if anybody has a question, you just let me know, and otherwise we will.
From the other part, because I didn't make, as I'm an artist, it was very nice for me to be interviewed by someone who had prepared his questions, and because I'm shy and frightened, and it helps me, so if you're gonna work on your show, help us. Because it's hard for us. So.
A good point, yes. Guylaine just really hit one of the most important things. You can make it be easy. You're the one that makes your interviewee give a good interview in the end, but by giving them all of the opportunity. You're the one that makes for the very best radio, like for whole music sampling of any sort, by giving people the very best assortment and cute little flow of music for an hour or 2 hours or however long it's going to be. But yeah, especially if you've got other people involved, and nobody's doing recorded music.
Not that I'm.
At least, yeah,
Nobody's said that at this point. No.
That's its own.
Right.
It just has its own logistics.
It's like when Julia does Meet the Music. You're talking about.
Right. Yeah. Just out of curiosity.
She's got a band. I mean, nobody's talking about bringing in an entire band.
Well, not an entire band. Probably the artist acoustically.
Well, if you're doing one person, but yeah, she's had. I mean, I know I've been on.
Yeah, I've had the
Meet the Music
Rockefeller
4, and so that was it was a 4-piece band, and we were loud. But God love you. I mean, I know after we'd done.
And I adore it. That was fantastic.
Julia pointed out. She said, "Oh," and she pointed out some stuff in the lyrics and music. I'm going, oh, I never knew that before. Until she said it. So.
And that band included Mike Lovelace too. So that was it. But yeah, always listen to the music that you're playing. Listen to the person that you are talking to. Make it as easy as you can for them to answer your questions, to give you good answers. I'm not saying that you'll agree with them. Be very, very careful of your content, especially if you're sitting there with more than one other person talking about a subject that you don't sound like, we know everything, and if you guys don't agree with us, you know nothing, because
We don't agree with each other, so that's not a problem.
Oh, yes, it is, because they're listening in. You always have to remember that, and again, you can't, if you're going live or being recorded, and sometimes you're sitting there live, especially if it's an off-the-wall time, and you're thinking, is anybody listening? Well, first of all, yes, somebody's listening. And second of all, if it helps, that's who you're talking to. You're talking to the person that is listening to you, and you're going to come across like you mean it because you do. I mean, you're being sincere, you're being honest, and that's important. Just stay focused. You have to remember that you're talking to your audience, and don't worry. And if you get bogged down, well, nobody's really listening. Then you shouldn't be doing radio because there will be people listening. But yes, if you've got more than one person in there with you, make infinitely sure that you're including everybody in the world that's going to listen to you.
I know my biggest frustration when doing public access television, we have a panel of 3 to 5 people on air, that we'd be speaking amongst ourselves, and I'd have to sit around, turn around like you would in a Malcolm in the Middle show, and go from third person to first person, and directly address the camera to deal with something objectivity-wise, in order to maintain panel objectivity. And to clarify a point about, alternate viewpoints, etc., it does get frustrating.
It has to be smooth. And again, you have sight. You're at the biggest disadvantage with radio. You can get away with more flaws, failures, mistakes, you name it, if you've got, well, except, again, if you had a wardrobe malfunction, we already know about those things too. Those don't work. But short of that, no, you can, if you can see what the person, if I just knocked this whole thing over and you guys saw it, it would be way less distracting because you know what happened as opposed to doing it on radio. I mean, that's of course an extreme, but you don't have you have to be better prepared and sound like you have to be better prepared and have everything together because they can't see you, they can only hear you.
I've already had nightmares about rolling over in my chair.
And another thing is, if you are recording even an individual, and I have had live people in the air studio record them that way, playing a musical instrument. Galen gave me a cappella singing, which worked beautifully, but besides that, you have to make sure it's well recorded. I mean, and it sounds like real easy. Another thing is, if we're talking and we each have a mic, we're looking at each other, that's no problem. But if we three are on, or even we wouldn't be sitting that far over, but if we three are on, they got to remember, you're going to have to remind them that when they're talking to each other, they still got to look at you. And we did that a lot in the Meet the Music studio, just because everybody's spread around the room at their music. But you have to be sensitive of that, whether you're pre-recording or whether you're going live, because that's, again, if you don't have visual, your audio has to be totally together in every way. But please keep me posted. I would be thrilled if you did. I'll be sad if you don't. And anytime I can help any single person. As regards theme songs, you can do whatever you want. Because you through ASCAP, people can play and do and all that kind of music.
BMI, CSAC, and streaming fees, yeah.
So you can do that.
Yeah, I've had that question from a couple of people. What music can I play? You can play anything you want. That's copyrighted because we are paying those fees.
You probably can't podcast things even if you have the capability. I mean, much like us, because if it's got recorded music in it, or even I can't podcast.
If it's pre-recorded or if it's recorded music, but you can stream it, but you can't podcast it.
Correct. I cannot podcast folktales because they tell me we don't have a battery of lawyers that would have to get in. Yeah, I
did not know that.
At least as regards public radio, and I think that we're on the same page on that. What you pay for lets you broadcast it, but not rebroadcast it. Meet the Musics, I could do.
Because it was original.
I could podcast if they were all originals.
Right, because you have some people that are doing covers.
Which I wouldn't.
Trying to explain to people when it comes to the copyright fees. There's composer and performer. So if I'm performing, I can perform a Johnny Cash song for free, but if he wrote it, he needs to get his fees for that, or his family does. So there are two fees that are associated with that, not just one.
Everybody that does a music show will be doing a playlist and posting that wherever you need to post it. Which again, it just is a matter of seconds. But
how do you handle parodies on that regard? Because the GLBT community uses parodies a lot, satires and parodies, in order to put out political points. How would you handle the streaming credit for that?
satire and parody are generally not, they're covered by copyright, you're free to do whatever you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Satire and parody.
That's what I
You
thought.
can use the
but-
melody, you can use,
Okay,
and make up your own lyrics, it's covered. you're
okay.
free.
I just wanted to make sure that we weren't gonna screw ourselves sideways.
Yeah, well, and you can certainly give that, if, you know, email me that kind of a question, and I would be more than happy to put it out on the National Federation of Community Broadcasters website. I mean, they've got, you know, they're really, really good for you know, that's why I signed us up for it. You know, I'm on the listserv, and we get, you know, the biggest thing is when it comes down to sponsorships, like what you're saying about being careful about, you know, when you're addressing those sponsorships.
And actually, though, I don't know how you'll do it, and people can read their own, but you can generate the exact copy, and so that'll be a good idea. Yeah, there's things that you can say, have to say and can't say for your underwriters. Is that what you call them for?
And it's all in here. If you don't have a copy,
Yeah.
let me know, and I can make a copy of this for you. You know, this is
Yeah, I
both
told
the
you it's not that thick.
training manual. Well, it's not too thick. I think it's only like 30.
You
40
want, if it
pages.
was any less than that, I would be questioning, am I going to be totally covered?
Yeah, and the first part deals with the FCC. Because I thought that was really nice the way you put that out there, is that they do not have a sense of humor.
No, I mean, they don't need to. I mean, they might be, all be nice. So they are nice guys. I mean, but then
I've
these are
met
the,
over the years, but they don't have a sense of humor.
and they'll come visit. You know, I mean, that's their job, and that's what they do. But you have to be in compliance. That's.
Yeah. Bobby?
You were talking about the license on music. Does that cover album tracks or just things that have been released to radio?
No, that's all music.
All music? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I run into the same problem.
Yeah, as long as it's copyrighted, you know, this is an album that's been released, they've got copyright on it, and you can play any section on that album that you want.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still waiting for the 2 turntables to arrive here yet, but
Do you have CD players and turntables?
planning on getting CD players, 2 CD players, we have 2 turntables that are coming. We'll also have the computer so that people can pull stuff off of hard drive, or if people want to come in, let's say they bring in their set list that's on a flash drive or something, they want to throw that in there, and then they're just going to record because they want to record here instead of recording at home. And they could do it there, drop it, record the show, and throw it into the
Cart
playback.
machine and reel-to-reel tape?
I think we still have reel-to-reel. Is it TIAC? Is that
TIAC,
one? Yeah, I think
yeah.
we still have one of those just because it's so darn cute. And somebody did have a cart machine, which is so hilarious
Oh my
because
gosh,
those are
you're kidding.
they're like 8-track things, but you put it your commercial. Yeah,
I still have 8 tracks.
you're crazy.
No, I have a very collective